UFC Featherweight, Billy Quarantillo. What's going on, man? It's rough times right now, but how are you feeling?
Yeah, good, man. Yeah, thanks again for having me. Obviously, I was at home, not doing anything right now, making dinner. So, yeah, crazy times right now. How's everything going with you?
Same old, man. Same old. Trying to do the best I can with with what we have. So, let's jump right into it. Your training camp. Were you already in training camp when they decided to lock everything down?
Yeah, so I'm still technically I'm still in training camp. So, I've been doing as much as I can. I'm still scheduled to fight Gavin Tucker April 25th in Nebraska. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just doing everything I can to stay ready to fight. If they haven't officially canceled anything yet. So right now I'm just training, doing everything I can to stay isolated from everyone, but also get ready for a fight.
Do you have any coaches coming in or any training partners coming to your house to help you out?
I have so I've been able to do mitt work with my head striking coach Dan Rawlings. Luckily, he's got his own like little training area, which is like isolated. It's at his house. Besides that, though, I've had a couple of training partners like throughout the last like week or so, but it's definitely not the same as like a normal training camp. I don't really get to see I don't get all those different looks that we're used to, but everyone has to deal with it. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
Definitely. Well, you must have a lot of extra time for yourself. So what are you doing to fill in those gaps?
Yeah, man, like a lot of stuff. Luckily, I live in Florida, and it's been beautiful weather out here in Tampa. I know my family up north in Buffalo, it's been kind of colder there, so they're kind of stuck inside anyway. But here I've been honestly, I think my dog loves it. My dog is enjoying me and my fiance being home a lot more. She does have to do labor and delivery. She's a nurse, so she does labor and delivery. Yeah, I've been walking the dog. I've been doing a lot of like mitt work, a lot of like what we call like Rocky or like jail workouts, where we're doing a lot of like push-ups, pull-ups, going for long runs, that kind of stuff. Just basically staying away from people, but still trying to get the work in.
Yeah, that's a big advantage, I feel, the weather, because you can still
Yep.
go outside and go for a run, because it is much harder to run in the cold compared to the warmer climates.
Well, that's what I thought. So my opponent, he's from Canada, but I grew up in Buffalo, and so I knew sometimes that cold weather actually like motivated me. I was like, man, it's freezing cold. Like I gotta I'm gonna get after it today. So some people in the cold weather, he might have a chip on his shoulder. So I need to make sure like the warm weather doesn't make me soft.
You mentioned your fiance. She works in a hospital, but she must have connections to other people in the field, that work in different parts of the hospital. What are they saying to you? What is she telling you?
Yeah, well, they don't. She's in like labor and delivery, so they don't like specialize in, like virus and disease control. They haven't really had too many cases. They haven't really tested a ton of the people there, but the ones that they've tested, a lot of them have been negative. So it's obviously nerve-wracking for anyone right now, but luckily they haven't had too many cases. Of course, they get worried when someone comes in there with the flu or flu-like symptoms, but right now it's we're used to it. We're used to her having to work through everything. There was a hurricane here 2 years ago, and we had to basically stay put, and she had to work through all that too. So it's something that we're kind of getting used to now as a healthcare worker. She's always called on.
Yeah, when I was younger, I lived in southern Florida near Miami for a year, and I've never experienced a hurricane in my life, but everybody always talked about hurricanes, but it almost seemed like they were used to it though.
Yeah. I've we've been through two technically now that like one really didn't develop, and the one hurricane that came, luckily it didn't hit us at all. But yeah, we knew like the people that have been in Florida for a long time, they're used to hurricane season.
You have a real estate license. Is it a good time to buy properties right now?
Yeah, honestly, so I'm not selling people on real estate right now. We actually, me and my fiance are actually closing on a house on Friday, so we're super excited about that. But if I were to tell people, yeah, it could be a good time to buy right now because the interest rates are going to go down. So, or they have been going down. the national government is giving a really good deal on interest rates. So it might be a good time. A lot of people are, saving their money to kind of see how this thing plays out. So we're still excited about getting our house because we got a good interest rate on it. So you just got to read the market sometimes. Sometimes when these things happen, this is when people make a good amount of money, in stocks and real estate and that kind of stuff.
Well, congratulations on buying a home.
Yeah, it's a long time coming, and I was able to put a decent amount of money down on it. So I saw an interview with James Krause, and he was talking about like investing in real estate, and that's something that I've been doing. I've always been doing, and I've wanted to do with my career is take some of that money that I get from like the UFC and put it into different assets and equity, so that when my career is over, I have something to show for it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that is a huge relief off anyone's shoulders to be a homeowner.
Yeah, that's what I was saying was we're super excited. We've both been renting here in Tampa for the last 10 years, and our the mortgage is going to be pretty similar to what we've been paying in rent anyway. So we're super excited to own some property and to keep growing from there. Have some stability here in Tampa.
Last December, UFC DC second round triangle choke. You earned your black belt in your UFC debut, which is like a double whammy. Did you sleep with your belt on?
Yeah, I that night, yeah, it was definitely in my bed. So Bree and my fiance and I came home after that fight, and it was it like almost didn't even feel real. It was just like such a special day, and a really funny story that I haven't really told anyone. It was just a funny story that happened. So after the UFC night, best night of my life. Throughout that week, we kept seeing Rashad Evans because he was commentating and he was also there helping out with some MMA products. So the night of my fight, I grew up a huge Rashad Evans fan, and he actually grew up in a town right outside of my hometown in Western New York. So he grew up in Niagara Wheatfield. I grew up in Lewiston. So the whole week we kept seeing him. I was like super excited just to see him, but obviously I was focused on my fight. So the fight it goes perfectly, magic. It was just a beautiful night. Got my black belt. And so we're coming home at like 4 a.m. We went out to have drinks. We went out and got all this pizza and stuff after. Our elevator to our hotel. We go back to our hotel, take the elevator up. And again, it's like 4 a.m. Our door opens, and across the hall, Rashad Evans, like the elevator door opens, and Rashad Evans is right there standing across from me. So we got to talk right then. My fiance went to bed right there because she knew we were going to like talk for a while. And I got to talk to him for like 20, 30 minutes. We were showing each other different techniques. He was really teaching me a bunch of cool stuff. Like he knew the stuff that I knew, of course. He's a legend. And it was just so cool. Like I find myself the night of my UFC fight, I got my black belt, I got my UFC win, and now I'm just like wrestling with Rashad Evans in our hotel room. It was awesome.
Definitely, he seems like Rashad Evans is one of the so-called good guys in the sport, right?
Yeah, I think so, and he's also Hall of Famer, former world champion. He's actually in great shape right now. He talked a lot about how he was, he leaned down quite a bit and is in really good shape now still.
You started your journey as a white belt around 9 years ago. Did you have a set timeline? Like, I'm going to achieve my black belt within these many years, or did you just go with the flow?
Yeah. So I always wanted to, I always heard stories about like BJ Penn and guys like that who got it like ridiculously fast. I knew starting at 20 years old. So I basically started in like 2010 when I was 20 or 21 years old. I wanted to get it before. I wanted to basically get it in under 10 years or under, because I was also doing Muay Thai and boxing and wrestling and doing basically everything else to be a complete fighter. So my goal was to get it. I would always tell myself, and I would actually write it down, I want to get it before or when I turn 30, or like at 30 years old. And it was pretty crazy how it worked. So I had some bad injuries right towards the end. I had a torn ACL and a broken hand. And I actually got it a day before my 31st birthday. So I basically still got it when I was 30. But I wanted to get it like before I was 30, but technically I got it when I was 30 still. So it was still like one of those things that like maybe I worded the goal a little differently, and but it worked out. Like it was literally a day before I turned 31. I was still 30 years old. So to me, that was a big accomplishment for me to get it year 30.
Definitely. Your upcoming fight, Lincoln, Nebraska, your opponent, Gavin Tucker. He's coming off a win, but he's been pretty inactive the last couple of years. When you watch some of his fights, what is your assessment?
Yeah, well, first thing, I don't know. I'm hoping to still fight Gavin, and I'm hoping to still fight April 25th. I don't know how it's going to happen if, he's from Canada, so I don't know what's going on with like the border restrictions or what, but I'm just assuming that we're still fighting. I think I'm still fighting someone maybe in April or May. So what I take from him is, that he's really good striker. He's a good fighter. He's a good overall fighter. You got to take, basically from his last 2 fights, you got to kind of take his last fight and kind of look at that as what you're going to get, because I think he got a lot better in the last couple of years after he came off of that Rick Glenn loss. I think he's a tough fighter. I think, man, there's going to be fireworks when we do fight. He's 11-1. I'm 13-2, and we have almost all finishes. He's never been finished. I've only been finished once. I've only been finished once in almost 30 fights now, counting my amateur fights. So it's just going to be fireworks when it happens. Hopefully, we can figure everything out. I don't want to go against the government and other people if they're saying that we can't do it. But I'm also a team player for the UFC. I want to get paid. I want to get paid to fight. I was ready. I was already halfway through training camp, and whether it's April 25th or in or May or whenever, I'm going to be ready to fight whoever they want me to fight.
Yeah, I think that's the attitude that you need to have for these next coming months, because you don't know what's going to happen. But at least the event is in the U.S. where you live, instead of, let's say, in Dublin or in Russia or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do like that it's here in the States. I am a little worried though, since my opponent is from a different country. My first fight in the UFC, I was supposed to fight Chris Fishgold, but he was from England, and about a week to 10 days before the fight, that's when he had to cancel it because he had visa issues. So I don't know if that was really what happened, but it definitely makes things a little more complicated when people are coming in from different countries, especially right now with this pandemic going on.
No matter where you fight, it most likely will be an empty arena, but you have experience with that. Tough Contender Series.
Yes.
And then you also have the flip side of, you have the experience of actually fighting in the UFC with the full crowd. What can you explain the differences?
Yeah, it's definitely different. So not only did I fight on with an empty arena at the Contender Series, I fought on the Ultimate Fighter too. So I've had 3 big fights where it was pretty much an empty studio audience with all 3 times Dana White was there too, which is pretty cool. Dana White and the first couple, the Fertitta brothers were there, the Fertittas were there, and all those guys. So it's a lot different. It's a lot different because you can hear, you can just hear everything. You can hear just the corner guys, both teams. It's just a totally different vibe. A vibe that my UFC debut, I felt like I was walking out. It was almost like a big party, and I knew it was going to be violent, and you never know what could happen out there, but it just seemed like way more high energy, where the small crowd fights, it's just more like dynamic, and there's just like a different type of intensity to it.
The sounds make a huge difference, because at a regular event you got the crowd overshadowing everything, right? The noise that the crowd makes, but then with no crowd, your coaches and the movement in the octagon, in the cage, that's what everybody's focusing on. Does it kind of get to people's heads, you think? Some people thrive in one compared to the other, right?
Yeah. Some people are completely okay with it. It's to some people, like for me, it kind of like the Contender Series fight, especially like the last one. It almost felt like I was in my gym. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I was like, all right, they're showing Uriah Faber and Dana White and all these guys, but I've been training at a gym before where there's been 20, 30 people, whether they're training or watching. So it kind of feels like that. But then there's also that reality of like, you're in there with a killer and it's like dead quiet. So I like the UFC environment better. I like that big crowd. I got into the sport to fight in front of millions of people, but I think these next few cards the UFC are going to have, whether it's in May or hopefully end of April or May, they're going to be some big cards, and they're going to get so many views and so many people watching them.
The champ of the featherweight division, Alex Volkanovski, he's looking to face Max Holloway again. What did you think of the first fight?
I thought it was a great fight. I think it's two guys displaying the highest level of MMA. I think Volkanovski did win a split, like a close fight. I know a lot of people, when I watched it, I kind of thought Max won. I thought Max won the first time I watched it, but I'm also a Max Holloway fan, and I was kind of rooting for him. And like when you're watching, you think the champ should, those close rounds that you kind of give to the champion. But if you take that out of there, overall, I think Volkanovski did enough to win the fight, win the decision. I think the rematch is gonna be great. I can see Max coming back and winning. He's been through some tough fights before and come back and looked even better. And he's a stud. Both guys are really good fighters. This whole pandemic, this whole coronavirus thing, I think is going to mix up a lot of the people, because some people aren't really training right now. Some people still are training, and I know how it goes when you take a couple of months off training. You're different. Your timing's off a little bit, and it's something you got to adjust to. I think a lot of people are going to have to make that adjustment in these next upcoming months. So
should they go with the rematch, or should Volkanovski face a new face like the Korean Zombie or Zabit?
No, I think he should. I think he should have to rematch, or I think he should have to rematch Max Holloway. I think it was close enough where, some people gave it to Max Holloway. You could, almost, it's hard to score leg kicks against punches. So I think Max Holloway he did enough to deserve an immediate rematch, especially with him going up to 55 and doing all that other stuff. I think he deserves an automatic rematch if he wants it, which I believe he does. And then you also got, Brian Ortega and the Korean Zombie matched up for like that second position. So I think it's going to be really interesting. Then, of course, you got my boy Ryan Hall. He's the dark horse of the division. No one wants to fight him. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how these next few months play out, and to see how the top of the division plays out. I got a couple more wins, and then I can start, getting involved in those talks. But, I'm excited for the future of this division.
It's good that you're watching it, though. Some guys, they don't pay attention to it. They're just like, oh, I'm just fighting, right? But to be up there, you got to know what's up there, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's something that I hear people say all the time. Like I'll hear like amateur fighters, or I'll hear other pro fighters. They're like, oh man, I want to get signed to the UFC. I want this, I want that. It's like, all right, you're gonna get signed to the UFC, but guess what? Now you're gonna fight a killer, and you're not making that much money. And this guy is a murderer, and he's gonna try to kill you. And there's been definitely fights. I've seen guys that have to get surgery after and have to be out for a year. And some of these guys, they act like they want these fights, but they don't. So I need to be ready. I've watched these guys. I know how I match up. I would fight Max Holloway or Volkanovski tomorrow if they offered it to me. I'd fight Tony Ferguson if they offered it to me. So that's the type of confidence you have to have as a fighter. I didn't come this far to wait around and not make a name for myself. I want to, climb the rankings. And that's why this pandemic, this break right now is upsetting to a lot of people, because, they're goal oriented, but it's something that we have to do for the public. And if we got to stay away, we got to do what's right, and then put on some shows when it's over. Yeah, a perfect example of always being ready is the Joe Soto versus TJ Dillashaw fight, when he stepped in on that day's notice, because you never know when that opportunity is going to come. And if you're not preparing to fight one of the killers, one of the top of the division, the champion, then you're not going to be ready, and it's just going to be a bad result for yourself. Now, you're a coach for an amateur team. You need to set an example for a lot of the younger guys and girls. When you see a situation like John Jones, what is running through your mind? Whew, geez, yeah, that's it's hard. It's definitely a different situation. I'll tell the amateur fighters. I've been telling them that since they all started with me, that you got to be really careful, because you're in the public eye now. The things that you do out there are going to set an example for everyone. So you gotta be on your best behavior. The problem is with John is he's so successful, And it's you see it with other people where like I can't even imagine what that's like to have just millions and millions and millions of dollars, have that popularity. And he's always just had that little troubling past, and it's hard. He definitely needs a little bit. He needs some more guidance. And yeah, it's a tough situation. I don't know how people around him can handle him because they've had so much success in the cage, but to have all these problems outside of the cage, it's really upsetting to see. Because I would consider him, without all this stuff on the side, probably the best fighter that we've ever seen.
Oh, that is definitely a very true statement.
Yeah.
Now, when you have a guy that might be battling demons, what can you do for that fighter?
Yeah, it's tough, and it's really tough, and it seems like with John, it's been around him for his whole career now. And even in the past, you've heard stories about him in college doing certain things that kind of raise some eyebrows. But again, he's so successful in the cage, and he's got the same work ethic. So I'm sure they're having a hard time with it because of that. If he was losing all these fights and he wasn't really successful, it'd be a whole different subject. But yeah, the all you can do is kind of just pray for him, just kind of show him the ropes, and show him examples of that. Like I can show the fighters examples of guys like John Jones, or you look at the other side, like guys like George St. Pierre, who he didn't have to talk all the trash, and he didn't have the outside of the cage incidents, really. So yeah, it's tough. At the end of the day, fighters got to deal with a lot of that stuff on their own, which is unfortunate. And what we can do is try to give them the guidance in the ring and in the cage, and try to help them with their technique, and do as much as we can. But at the end of the day, it's on John Jones.
Yeah, I almost feel like if Rashad Evans never left Jackson Wink, this might not have ever happened. You know what I mean? Because Rashad, he's like one of those examples in MMA, right?
Yeah, he's a great example of someone who just did it the right way. Avoided trouble, and knowing what I know about Rashad. He grew up in an area where it's not like super popular. People aren't like super successful in like athletics like John Jones was able to do, or I'm sorry, Rashad Evans. And John Jones grew up a little bit north of there. He actually grew up in upstate New York as well. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's a tough situation. It seems like he kind of got out of this one. He seems like he got like house arrest, I heard. So he'll be back. Who knows what's going to happen? But right now we get the MMA community's got enough to deal with that. It is what it is. John being John.
Yeah, we're all on house arrest. Anyways,
yeah, exactly.
Anyways, hopefully April 25th, you go to Lincoln, Nebraska, get to fight. Get a chance to get a bonus, get a chance to perform, get a chance to entertain. Billy, before I let you go, man, I appreciate you supporting the MMA media. When Dana White came out.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me, man. Yeah, I'll do interviews with all you guys. I'm on house arrest too, so I'm in my little office room. Hopefully, we'll be in our new house within a few days here. So I'll get a new, maybe I'll get a little studio room like what you got over there.